Hello, I'm Bret. This is my channel. I'm live every week, and you can join us like you're doing now. Hopefully you're live. If you're watching this after, come back on Thursdays. I think it's 1 p.m. U.S. Eastern, so that's like UTC -5 right now. And this is like year 5. We're past 200 episodes now, so the first video I had less gray. You can know that we've been here a while because that's happened. All right, so we've got some guests. We're going to get into learning Kubernetes a different way, something different than my typical course or whatever you're doing on my end. If you're coming from the courses, we're going to talk about actually getting in and contributing. So that's an exciting thing because I'm going to learn a lot here. I'm excited to have Chad on this show. But real quick, before we get to all that, if you've been in my world, if you're on my newsletter, thank you. If you're in the chat on Discord, that's above us, 12,000 people. Thank you so much for being there. If you're a member or a patron, thank you so much for that. I really appreciate you. You're what keeps this show and the podcast going. And recently we've just noticed how much our podcast has grown. So I'm excited about that. And if you've been there, you've probably seen this because I've probably told you I'm starting a live course. This is the first time I've ever done it. In 2 weeks, on the 20th, we're going to start a 2-week adventure of meeting for 90 minutes every other day. And we're going to hang out on Zoom. You're going to learn this stuff from me, basically GitOps and GitHub Actions all at once. And at the end of the 2 weeks, the goal is you've done it. You've learned it from me. You've done it for practice. And now you're implementing it for some real world projects of your own. So ideally, you're coming in and you knew Kubernetes a little bit and you know how to build Docker containers and you just want to automate all the fancy stuff. You want to do security scans. You want to do testing. You want to test on a Kubernetes cluster that you spin up dynamically. You want to do all that fun stuff. And then you want that final stage of GitOps style deployments, which I think is the way that we're going to be doing all of this stuff in the future, if not already. So we're starting that on the 20th. You can sign up at this link. I'll just put it in chat. There's links below. There's links everywhere, links in my newsletter, because it's all I'm doing right now. So it's pretty much all I'm talking about right now. But that's that. That's the only news I have. There's lots of other things. You can find links below for the newsletter, the course coupons, the Discord server, what else? The membership. You can join this channel and get extra perks in our chat. But enough of all that. Let's jump to the fun part. I'm glad to say that these two people I was hanging out with last month. We got there in the middle, Chad Crowell, and on the right, Matt Williams, at least on my right. Welcome. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Thank you.
This is why I have a stream deck, just so I can throw out random sounds. By the way, if someone gives a super sticker or whatever, we do play the reggae horn. So we reserve that sound for a very special situation. Well, thank you all for being here. Ali, I see you in chat. Matt's in chat. Sabin, what's up? What's up? All the regulars, people hanging out. So yeah, we're going to get into it, and Chad's going to teach us a whole lot of stuff. So we were all hanging out at Civo Navigate. And that was in Florida last month. Man, it seems like it was just last week. And Chad had his excellent what do we call this? Book shirt. It wasn't a shirt book. It was a book shirt.
Yep, I didn't wear the book, but I got the second best thing, which is a shirt with the book cover printed on it. So
it was awesome. And if you didn't know, is
that also your Halloween costume?
He dresses a book.
I'm surprised I'm not wearing it right now, actually.
You just put paper on your head. This is what we're talking about. This little thing right here. So it's in Meep right now, right? You're releasing this year, but people can get the chapters as they happen. Is that how it's working?
Yep, it's been in Meep. It's going to printing this month, so stay tuned for a print copy very soon. I've finished writing. Finished editing. We're in the final stages, so I'm very excited.
Yeah. And you have some coupons to give away today. So people stick around. How many of these are you giving away today?
I have 3 coupons for a free ebook.
Cool. So we're going to have some trivia at the end. And for those that get it right, you're going to be able to reach out to him and get a free copy of this. And I need this book. So I'm not going to be participating in the questions because I don't know if we're going to. We didn't really actually talk about questions, so I actually don't know the answers because usually I'm the one who's like, I can't compute on my own questions.
And I don't need the book either. I bought it on the flight home from CivoConf.
Awesome, thank you.
Well,
I think there's a lot of cool exercises in there. There's a lot of ways that you can prepare for the exam, being that it's in the terminal, without having to read a lot of theory, and there's not a lot of talking. I don't talk a lot normally, so my book is the same.
You already have you have a fan. I don't know if you saw that in chat. Sub to Heap. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. So, that's pretty amazing that you just happened to purchase that 2 weeks ago. So this is perfect because now we got people on the show that are in this exact scenario of they are learning Kubernetes, or at least in some cases learning the rest of it. Like we maybe learned some features, but I always find that like when I take a certification, I realize that there's all these other things with an app that I never had to use, but I have to know it for the test. And so I always feel like the certifications make you, even if you're someone that's even an expert on the tool, it always makes you a more well-rounded expert in that tool. Like the edit command. I don't use a lot of edit commands, but I imagine they're on the test. So
yeah, it's a good way to provide a vetted and true fire way of getting your Kubernetes basics, if you will, and it covers the gambit. So storage, networking, troubleshooting, cluster configuration, all your kubectl commands and everything. So it's really a good place to start, I would think, for a beginner, but also like you said, like just brushing up on your skills as a more advanced user too.
Yeah. And for the podcast, for the listeners, sorry, what we're talking about is acing the Certified Kubernetes Administrator exam. And you can get it at acingthecka.com. That's ACING the CKA.com. For Matt and me, because I can't spell either. But today we're talking about this, but we're talking about the idea of learning an alternate way of learning rather than watching YouTube videos or a course. And of course, there's a lot of lab stuff out there. There's Killer Coda. There's other options. O'Reilly has a platform. It seems like now the way that you learn some of these things online, there's Code Cloud with K's. Shout out to Mumshot. There's all these different ways to learn by doing, but you're suggesting another way, right?
Yeah, I think going through courses, I've made courses myself as well. And going through courses has its benefits. And I personally learn better through video and that style of learning. But there's, in addition to that, maybe you've finished a course and you want to continue your learning. There's a way to contribute to open source. And this allows you to take real world problems and, things that allow you to impact the project in real time. And the problem, there's a host of them, so there's never a shortage of problems to solve, and this allows you to just get your hands dirty on solving real world problems and getting a feel for how the pull request method works and working in teams, and also you kind of get a side benefit of being inside of a community this size, which is, with Kubernetes, it's quite large. So
nice. By the way, I didn't even mention this, but Matt is now co-host. Random, but he's here to learn too. So how did you get started? Okay, so we're going to back up a second and do some fundamental words that maybe not everyone is familiar with. So we're going to talk about SIGs. Can you tell us what that is in the Kubernetes space?
Yeah, so SIG is acronym for Special Interest Group. And a special interest group is nothing more than a group of people getting together and focusing on a specific area of Kubernetes. Like there's a SIG for networking, there's a SIG for storage, there's a SIG for API, there's a whole host of SIGs. Don't have time to, I'd probably be here for an hour if I listed them all, but
if you could list them all, I would be impressed, by the way.
I would too, yeah.
More than 5 or 10 and I'm running out.
Yeah, so it's just a way for folks to focus their time and energy on a specific area of Kubernetes, being that it's so broad.
Yeah. So when we say SIG, we're really just talking about a group of people that are spending time working on some part of the ecosystem, and it doesn't have to be developer stuff, right? Like this can be documentation. This can be we're going to talk about community and contributing today, which has its own SIG, which I didn't know about. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think it's a valid point, and something that I plan to highlight today, which was you don't have to be a developer or even technical to contribute to Kubernetes. It's really it's multifaceted. So there are areas where you can contribute to the mainline code, but also there's opportunities to add stuff to documentation or to add a tutorial for someone learning Kubernetes. So that's really what the focus is of the contributor experience SIG. So contributor experience, as the name implies, really is focused on making the contributor experience better, and that for developers and technical and non-technical people. So making that experience in terms of what we're talking about today, which is how do you contribute as a new contributor, but also how can you improve contributing and look for other areas to contribute as well.
Yeah. I lost my question.
And I think one of the things that's interesting about the SIGs, you're not like voted onto the island and booted off. I mean, anybody can participate in those SIGs as well, right?
Yeah, exactly. Anybody and everybody can participate in a SIG. There is a bit of a legal hurdle there that you have to cross, but it's not too bad. And everyone is encouraged to participate.
Yeah, a lot of them I learn about them because they might do like a YouTube or a Twitch stream of their SIG meetings for those that just want to sort of view but not participate, right? And I'll sometimes, like, YouTube will sometimes recommend those to me. So maybe a tip out there is if you find a couple of SIG meetings on YouTube and watch them, maybe YouTube recommendations will stop telling you about whatever the disaster of the day is, and maybe it'll show you some SIG stuff that you can actually learn from. Yeah. Mine's filled with like the latest Tesla and Apple stuff, so I hardly see Kubernetes stuff.
I was just watching a bunch of the SIGs, a bunch of the developer experience or community experience SIGs just a little while ago, and so all these people I already know, like Chris Short and Caslin and a bunch of others. So it was neat.
Yeah.
I think it's really important to have a group of people that are dedicated to like taking care of contributors, right? Because most everyone, I mean, I guess you could say that most people are doing this as a part of their job. They work for Red Hat or they work for Microsoft, and their boss is telling them, you must contribute. But in a lot of cases, people are, volunteering their time, and they're taking their time out of the day to contribute to something that kind of everyone benefits, or thousands of people benefit from. So it's pretty right. Important.
It is pretty special and rare in the history of software to be involved in I guess I'm going to say a leadership way in a project that spans the globe and spans all of tech and all there's other things like Linux kernel and maybe, but it's one of those things where it's so unseen that I can't list more than one person that contributes regularly to the Linux kernel. So but with Kubernetes, it's everywhere, and once you start diving into that community in terms of you start watching videos or you jump on the Slack or you go to one of the conferences. Now we got these Kubernetes Day conferences that are popping up everywhere, and I'm just waiting for one to show up in my backyard, and I didn't know it was supposed to be there. It's like once you start dipping your toe in this, suddenly you realize there's this vast community of people that are all excited about the same stuff, and it's a lot of fun to be in. So for those of you out there, that if you get a chance to go to any of the things virtually or physically in the real world, they're awesome as well as contributing. By the way, I want to thank you so much, Subdeep. We got a super chat, so you get the reggae horn today. By the way, I want to you gave some great slides. He brought some slides. Chad did. We don't do slides here normally, but every once in a while, someone brings some really good looking stuff, and why don't you walk us through I'm someone who's interested in contributing. I'm on the outskirts. I attend the conferences, or I read the documentation all the time, and I didn't even know there was an opportunity for me as like a non-Go language expert who's diving into the Kubernetes source code every day. Like, what does this experience look like for me, and how can I start?
Yeah, I think it's really important to point out that even if you're a first timer, you've never worked on an issue or created a pull request before, it's really important to point out that it's like so easy nowadays to get started. And so if you see in the bottom left of your screen there's first timers only, firsttimersonly.com. It's a site that's created by Scott Hanselman and Kent Dodds, and you can go through the process of creating your first PR, which is kind of that first barrier to entry for people. So it doesn't have to be so scary. You could do this in a practice environment and get used to the process. Once you do it a few times, it really does become easier, and you get more familiar with it. And then, beyond that, I think it's just getting acquainted with the structure of, Kubernetes and how the groups work. So we talked about SIGs before. There's also committees and working groups. And there's a way to, look at issues, look at the existing issues. And there's a special tag that's put on these issues, which is kind of a clue for first timers. And those clues are, the issue will be tagged as good first issues, or it'll be tagged with help wanted. And so that gives, a lot of people, at least I thought a few years back, I need to run the code locally. I need to find a bug or something that needs to be fixed, and then create an issue myself. That's not necessarily the case. I think, like I said, there's a plethora of issues that other people have brought up. And so you can take one of those issues and work on it and contribute that way. And so, yeah, we have first good issues. And so that's a good way to just dive right in. And now that you're familiar with the pull request process, now you can start working on the actual work that needs to be done related to this project.
Do some of these have? All right, I'm seeing some like some of the tags. I was wondering if some of them were where it would say like documentation or indicate the sort of the type of person that would need to work on this. I didn't know if that was a common tag.
Yeah, so there's a lot of different tags.
SIG network. Yeah, SIG network and scheduling.
Yeah,
so these are projects.
Yeah, most
SIGs.
of them will be tagged with a SIG. It'll be tagged with, there's 3 main organizations related to Kubernetes. It's not just the Kubernetes that we're all familiar with, but there's also community and website. So there's even within GitHub, there's 3 different organizations that you can be looking at issues from. And then within those organizations, you can go to, there's lots of other subdirectories inside that repo, and you'll be able to, it's just classifying, tags, or I guess some people call them labels. That's just a way to categorize and easily tell like what this ticket is, what this issue is for.
Yeah. I mean, it's pretty awesome that on the main Kubernetes repo, there's currently 22 open tickets that are labeled good first issues. So chances are, if you're actually someone who's using Kubernetes or learning it and it's kind of your thing right now, chances are there's something here that you can at least, it's almost like, sorry, I'm going to stop that statement for a minute. To me, it reminds me of like my early days in Stack Overflow when I wanted to work on my rep, right? And I would try to find the easy questions about Docker or whatever the tool du jour of the day I was working on. and I would try to find those lonely unanswered questions that are like 6 months old, and I would try to find an answer for them, just to help with my my rep. And that kind of is like a good first issue kind of approach, I think, where you're going after the low hanging fruit. It doesn't require necessarily a lot of knowledge, or even how do I find the file that particular part of the Kubernetes stack is in, or whatever. Because I'm definitely not someone who's like, all the three of us have been using Kubernetes for so long, we probably don't remember exactly which year we first started, but it's, I still wouldn't probably be able to tell you even where in the Kubernetes repository to deal with a particular issue of the API, right? Like in terms of code, because I'm just not someone who's at that level, even though I feel like I'm a part of the community. I bought the t-shirt, so that's the same thing that happened with me on Docker when I my first contribution to Docker was fixing a doc. So, and that itself taught me so much about contributing, because I didn't know what signing off a commit even meant, right? Like that's a thing on GitHub. I mean, everywhere, but I mostly spend my time on GitHub, but there's this whole little thing that you maybe didn't know about that you need to do. And then I didn't know that I needed to squash my commits. And there was like multiple steps to the process beyond just me changing the one line of docs. But once I did that a few times, suddenly I felt like, well, I can change these docs whenever I want, because I know how to do it. And I know the people that are going to help me approve it. And it sort of freed me from the apprehension of getting involved, because you just don't know, right? So, all right, so we've got our org, we've picked our project, we found an issue. Is that where we're at? What's the next step?
And who is saying that this is a first good issue? Who determines that?
Mostly the lead maintainers of the whatever SIG or whatever group you're in. So there'll be chairs of every SIG and committee that kind of monitor these tickets. Technically, anybody could label this a good first issue, but there is a series of checks and balances. So you have with every repo you have a handful of reviewers. So with that being said, there's really nothing you could do to like if you're afraid of doing any damage, there's like if your pull request, doesn't automatically deploy to prod, there's a series of checks and balances. There's gatekeepers. There's reviewers, I should say, to review your PR, accept it or not, and so that kind of eliminates the barrier for people too.
Nice. I did, while you were saying that, I realized. I didn't actually know about first timers only. I don't think, at least I don't remember it. And like Matt and I discussed the other week, it's not bookmarked, so I must have never been there. I just bookmarked the whole internet. So good first issue. So I'm sitting here thinking, okay, there's all these projects, and GitHub isn't really great at searching. I mean, I guess maybe you could probably figure out a GitHub search for searching across specific organizations and specific repos for good first issue tags. But this, to me, almost, I don't see Kubernetes as an option, but now I'm realizing now I'm sad because maybe I can't do this here. But the idea originally with this website was like, if I want to help with Haskell, it'll show me the repos that are in here, and then I can immediately, and it shows me the count. So I don't have to go search, because like while you were talking, I went and searched in external snapshotter, and which I just was down a rabbit hole. But yeah, they don't have any there. They have one, but there's nothing in that particular repo. So how am I supposed to find these if I don't even know what repo I want to be in, or if I don't even realize how many repos there are? And I was actually gonna suggest this, but now I feel like, okay, maybe we need to start adding all the Kubernetes project repos to this website. That's maybe.
Or I have a better idea.
Okay, you have something.
Yeah, so there's this cool product out there called Open Sourced, and if you haven't checked it out, I would encourage you to do so. It's he's B Dougie on the internet, but OpenSauce.pizza. I just put a link in the chat as well.
By the way, great looking website. I just love this look.
Yeah,
websites.
Yeah,
Any?
so open source is focused on getting your contributions noticed. So if you're somebody who contributes often to any open source project, it's a way to basically pull that into a dashboard, create metrics for people who are looking at it. Ideally, you know, potential employers, and it's a good way to get your contributions noticed and also kind of highlighted in a certain way, better than GitHub does right now.
Yeah. Um, I haven't actually explored. This is like on my to-do list, um, because it's an interesting. Like I don't give this to my students. Like there's always people coming out of my courses that are looking for what's next, right? And I don't think I really have anything on there like beyond labs and other examples and demo apps and stuff like that. I need to start adding some of this contribution stuff to that list, because you're convincing me now that that's a gap at the end of the learning process of you've got Docker 101 now, you've got Kubernetes 101. What's the, besides certification and just doing more of the same, what's the other piece of this? And it's our involvement. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, if you open the link that I just sent in the chat, sorry. Yeah, I created a custom dashboard, or Brian did. Created a custom dashboard that lists all the some of the most popular project from the CNCF. So this is where, like, when you want to look at a potential project, let's say you're interested in Kubernetes, you're interested in contributing, but maybe you want to check out Prometheus or etcd or Helm, which are probably equally as popular projects. You could create a dashboard and see, what people are contributing to today, what changes have happened in the code in the last however many days. And then you can also see, like, you have an even profile pic from GitHub that lists the people, so you can go and ask those people in I don't think we've mentioned this yet, but Kubernetes has its own Slack channel or Slack workspace, and you can go reach out to this person and say, hey, I noticed that you contributed to this, you did this, that, and the other thing. I'd like to know more about that. And I think you'll find that people are quite friendly and willing to explain what they did or help you in any way that they can.
Yeah, it's kind of the culture that, so many people around Kubernetes and the CNCF have, I've lost count of how many tweets I've seen essentially of, I love this community. I'm so glad my job made me do it, or I stumbled into it, or I somehow found it. I think that's something that I come from the old Microsoft background of enterprise software, and I felt like that was always part that was lacking. They always try to do stuff at conferences, but once I got into open source and we actually started going to conferences and meeting the people in the community, or just going to meetups if you're lucky enough to have meetups in your local area. That's when it really started to stick for me. So,
yeah, they just started this thing called. Go ahead, Matt. Sorry.
Go ahead. You go.
I was just going to mention, speaking of communities, they just started doing this thing called Kubernetes Community Days, and it's kind of a spinoff of DevOps Days, if you've ever been to one of those, but or at least follows the same kind of method to bring people together. But yeah, KCD, there's one happening in Mumbai pretty soon, and shout out to Siam Pathak, and he's a good friend, and yeah, so there's a ton of meetups. You just look on meetup.com or check out your local KCD, Kubernetes Community Days, or just the community is super friendly. I think you'll find that if you go to the Kubernetes Slack, which I just posted in the chat, slack.k8s.io, you'll find that people are super friendly, willing to help, and you'll really be treated fairly and nicely, and you'll kind of be guided. That's actually the recommended kind of first step in terms of getting acquainted with a community is reaching out to someone and saying, hey, how can I help, or how can I contribute?
Nice. All right. Where do we leave off?
I had a question about open source. Well, so I see at the top of their open source pizza website the pricing. Who is the customer for? I mean, they've got some free dashboards, but who's paying for this?
It's the companies. So the companies who are searching for contributors. Because in a lot of ways, people are, to kind of, if you've ever hired somebody, you go through the process of like, qualifying them and going through the series of technical interviews. This is a way to kind of bypass that, right? Because you already can see. It's almost like a project portfolio. You can already see what they're contributing to, what they've done. It's a good way for employers to filter those people out.
Right.
Great idea. It's also a very common question is, how do we, when we have the Q&A shows and we're talking about getting started in DevOps, people are commonly interested in how do I improve my rep on the internet, right? And a lot of times the answer is, well, everything you're learning, do it in GitHub, like make it open source, show the accomplishments when you have zero experience and you're just trying to show that you've grokked the Kubernetes land. And this is also usually, I feel like for my students at that point, contributions seem too scary, but we're gonna have to use this episode as a reference to nope, there's actually a process, and there's actually people expecting you to show up brand new and giving you the tools you need to actually get started without it being the old days of you go into an IRC channel and say, is there anyone here that can help me with my issue? That was
and you can't just have automatically you can't just rely on that GitHub graph to be all green to show that you're contributing to open source projects, because I can neither confirm nor deny that I may have a GitHub action that automatically posts every single day to ensure that my chart is green all the way around. So
yeah, is this like the modern equivalent of padding your resume?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think so, yeah.
Who would do such a thing?
No, I would argue that you have to do. I have a GitHub action that wants to do a scheduled build of my images, and if there's this quirk on GitHub Actions that it can't actually really be your cron, because it will, if you don't do anything on a repo for like 30 days, it'll just stop running stuff. So my argument would be, well, I'm committing to the repo so that it'll keep actually doing the GitHub Actions every day. It's a weird quirk. Why put in a scheduled cron feature if it's just going to stop running after a month? I gave them feedback, and I was like, this is the weirdest thing that's going to bite everybody. If they're listening, if GitHub's listening. The next step, I wanted to ask about, like, what is this? This looks like work to me. So how do we break this down so it's not so scary to me?
Yeah, it's like the hokey pokey for Kubernetes. So this is the kind of cycle that you would go through to contribute to the to anything in Kubernetes, any code. So this is pretty basic GitHub Flow. So GitHub Flow is a super simple way to pull down code, create your own branch, and push it back up. So this kind of outlines this in a diagram. So Step 1, fork your own copy of the Kubernetes repo, which creates a copy of it in your own GitHub account. Step 2 is clone the forked repo to your local machine. Step 3 is down.
Yeah, I was testing you. It's on the left over here. Okay.
Yeah, on the left. So step 3 is add the upstream. So add the original, like the source of where you got the code from, to your upstream, and then do a git fetch, git checkout, git rebase, do not git merge, and then that will. So that's step 3. Step 4 is create a branch, and then make changes on that branch. Is step 5. Step 6 is push the branch to your branch in your local repo. And then step 7 is create that pull request, which will a pull, for the lack of a better word, is a way for you to it's like pulling into the main branch of Kubernetes. So you're requesting that to be brought in. Try not to use the word merge, but in GitLab, it's a merge request. Same thing. So you're telling someone, I want this to be brought into the main code. And that's what we talked about before with the kind of approval process and those reviewers. And then once your PR is accepted, then it's merged into the main branch.
Right. So this is so for those that this is new stuff. What we would say that this is like a standard thing in modern repos. So it's nice to know that if you're going to do something like this and you want to help out and change something in a repository for the Kubernetes projects, that this is not a completely different process from the norm of someone who's doing pull request in a modern repo on GitHub, right?
Yeah, and this is exactly the same process that you would go through on the First Timers site, First Timers only. So yeah, this is very common. This is what I do every day at my job. And so if this is confusing to you, if this, with all the arrows and the colors, just go to First Timers, getting the First Timers only, and go through that process. And I think it'll start to make sense once you actually, do it yourself.
Yeah, there's I need to look more into the good first issue. The First Timer? Sorry,
First Timers only.
yeah. Because the one that I keep thinking about is EddieHub, because he was one of the first people I saw that was basically creating a community on GitHub to say, hey, come and do a pull request on our org and be a part of it. And I thought that was a really cool, interesting way to just say, it's almost like you're joining the club by doing a pull request. And I don't know if that's kind of what they're outlining on First Timers Only, but it was an interesting idea. I'm sure there's some people out there that have heard of EddieHub. So,
yep, same
cool
deal.
Stuff. Yeah, and this is sort of like bringing together some of the other websites that all have different ways for you to get involved. So this, like, none of this is Kubernetes specific, but it's great to know that you can use these processes and some of these things for Kubernetes as well.
Mm-hmm.
All right. What's next?
Yeah, so we went through the process of creating a PR, or I guess I should talk about if you're looking at issues and you've decided, oh, I'm gonna pick up this good first issue. It's always good practice to assign it to yourself. You can do that by commenting on the issue with a /assign. The / kind of indicates kind of a special bot to take action and to mark you as assigned to that issue. So that's important to remember in terms of letting people know that you're working or you're actively working on that issue. And then once you've done that, obviously what we just talked about, so forking, cloning, creating a PR, and then if you're on the development side, it's compiling compiling Kubernetes, which is a little bit more complex. But as of late, you can do that via GitHub code spaces, which makes it a lot easier. All you need is a browser, and you can, and you're off to the races.
I know that we have all these other alternatives, code server, all these other stuff, but I code spaces is just so awesome. I don't use my iPad right now, but when I was heavily in the iPad over the lockdown, I just love that I could actually have an iPad keyboard and get stuff done. And code spaces, if someone hasn't tried that, I'm sure everybody has out there, but if you're that one person, or set up your own code server, or there's a lot of options.
Yeah. And it's like a Visual Studio Code in your browser, so it's super easy to use, very intuitive.
Yeah. Okay, what's next? Yeah, by the way, I didn't know this. This is something I've today I learned. I can actually interact with the bot myself. I don't need special permissions to interact with this bot necessarily.
Yeah, my favorite is Meow, or Honk, which will just post a picture of a cat, which is always fun. And so I'm a fan of this. No, recommend that.
Is that like the way to keep it? Like the bump. We it's just like the alternative to the bump.
Yeah, create a cron job that does a meow for everything. I think you'll annoy a lot of people that way, but it might work.
You'll certainly get on their radar. Maybe not the intended outcome, but
yeah. So if you scroll down a little bit, you'll see. I think it's important to point out, the issues tab versus the pull request tab. So the issues one is the one we talked about before, where you're searching for good first issues and looking at the issues related to. With this example, it's the test-infra repo inside of Kubernetes. And so once you submit a pull request, that pull request will show up under the pull request tab. And so that allows the same amount of tracking that you would have anywhere else. So the bot kind of guides you through it. So if you go through your first pull request, it'll say, it'll give you kind of a good outline for filling out that pull request in terms of those, the / whatever to assign it to a specific SIG or what have you. And then allows you to be more descriptive about, what your PR request is trying to solve or what it's doing. So it'll be pre-populated with all that information. So you can it's kind of like filling in the blanks. And then you can also, after the fact, anybody can do this, including reviewers, is comment on the pull request, and you can go through the process of communicating about how that's going to be approved or denied, or what fixes you need to make. Maybe you need to create another pull request, and so those are ways that you can track the pull request throughout its life cycle.
Nice. I think the Kubernetes projects have the most advanced usage of labels of any projects that are in my world. I mean, Docker has a lot, but I don't regularly see 8+ tags on issues and PRs for them. So
a good first, like if somebody's looking for an example. Posted in the chat, I linked to an issue that I've been walking somebody through in terms of, and this is a good opportunity to give a shout out to, or not a shout out, but a warning to people who are still using the Kates.io registry. So one of the biggest changes recently, and this has been kind of like, if you go to Kubernetes.io, you'll see this is at the top in red, red warning sign on the main site there. That's
on where? Sorry.
So Kubernetes.io.
Yeah.
And so you'll see the warning there that legacy Kates.gcr.io, the registry, they're moving over to a new container registry. So it's going to be, so this will break a lot of clusters, I feel. So that's why they've outlined it in red here. But so back to like an example, that was an issue. So this was an issue of not a technical issue, but an issue of changing all the references from Kates.gcr.io to registry.kates.io is what the new one is going to be. So if you go to that link that I just posted, I just have a screenshot, or I have it goes right into that issue where, this is somebody that's going to go through all the documentation and all of the all the code that references k8s.gcr.io and change that to registry.k8s.io. So that's one of the ones where you don't really, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be technical, but also one of those good first issues where this is something that anybody could do, right? Even a bot could do, I suppose. But I think what they're looking for is just a way for somebody to contribute.
Yeah, I don't know where you put that link, but I don't see it.
I'll do it in the private chat here.
Yeah, if you're posting them in the YouTube chat, it blocks URLs by default. But I'm not seeing. They've changed some stuff in YouTube recently, and I'm not seeing anything being denied, which is maybe what's.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Matt has special permission, so he can post links. But by default, anyone that tries to post.
Although it didn't seem to work at first, so I don't know. I had to do it twice.
Oh
no, really? I want to post it.
Yeah. Yes, I'm sure. Yes, I'm sure. All right, I've got it from the back channel.
Yeah, this is not very fluid for the podcast listeners, I suppose, but just
that's why I have excellent editing.
Yeah, so I guess that's the point that I'm trying to make here is that if you're looking for an example of how this whole workflow plays out, this is a good example of a non-technical way where somebody created an issue, saying this needs to be changed, and somebody, if you see the /sig/ assign, those are the those are the keywords that we were talking about before.
And this is one of those things where I mean, a difference between a very public repo versus something that a company might do just internally. A lot of these good first issues. I mean, I think Bret mentioned the term low-hanging fruit. It's something that we'll want to do internally and just get them all done. It's kind of hard to switch over to this mindset of, okay, if I find something that's really easy to do, don't do it, because we want to make sure that we encourage other people to join and to do those good first issues. That would be super, like, maybe the person who assigned it as good first issue, it might be something they can do in their sleep, and it's like, just get it done. But no, we got to let somebody learn how to do this stuff, and they're just to know the fact that maybe that contributor is not going to be there forever, so we need to bring more people up through the channels to be able to do this as well, and not just rely on the old experts. So it's a challenge to find those and really to not do it myself.
Yeah, definitely. I think you're right. I think the impetus there is to it's just to leave that low hanging fruit for someone else that may find it more challenging, or who's more introductory, and I think a lot of people will tag those appropriately for that very reason, or create a lot of people create those issues with that intent. So I think that's the nature. I think that with Kubernetes, and I think the reason why I suggest going to Kubernetes first in terms of your first kind of open source journey is that that's what the community is based around, is this idea that you're working with other people, you're not necessarily paying it forward, but allowing others to grow as well. And it's kind of community based versus I'm gonna compete with you to contribute more than you or better than you. So I think you'll find it very much the former.
So
I think one of the things that okay, go for it.
I was going to say, one, we were talking about the Slack, and we have some. These are the pretty slides that these are great. There's the Slack. We mentioned that. What was it? Slack.k8s.io, I believe. So everybody make sure, like, to me that's one of the first things you do, even if you don't necessarily hang out in there very often. Just at least be there, so that when you need, like, I don't chat a lot in that Slack, but a lot of times I'll be on a site, I'm interested in a thing, I'm like, oh yeah, this is an interesting tool, and they will have their own channel in the Kubernetes Slack community or in the CNCF community, and I'm already a member of those, so I can easily just click the link. It'll take me right to their channel, or whatever, and it's an easy way to jump real quick into the conversation without just hanging out all day and expecting to, consume all the chats and all the channels, because obviously that's not possible for a human to do. But I didn't know about the mailing list. Do all the SIGs have mailing lists?
They do. So if you go to any SIG, in GitHub, there's a special page for each SIG, and you can join their mailing list, which will not only it's a Google group, so you'll get added to the Google group, and you'll be able to participate in that conversation. Meaning you can see what people are saying about that particular SIG. You can be invited to the SIG meetings. Usually, the SIGs will have a meeting once a month, or maybe even more frequently. And so that's a good way to keep up with, it's kind of like a RSS feed. You can keep up with what the SIGs are doing, what everyone's talking about.
Let's see. I guess, did we skip a link? Chad was saying something about starting to contribute to Kubernetes SIG group. Is that the list of SIGs?
Contributor experience group.
Oh, the contributor experience.
Yeah, so I can paste that in the chat as well. And
that might have been one of the ones that you pasted that I didn't see.
Yeah, I think I got blocked on that one too, so I didn't realize that. Sorry.
Is that the Kubernetes dev docs?
You did one? You talked about finding the PR, or finding the issue that is a good first issue to deal with. And you went straight to PR. I think one of the things that should, for some things like search and replace for GCR.io to Kates.io or whatever it was, that probably doesn't need much discussion. But for other first issues, should they also start out by commenting by, here's how I think I'm going to solve this, or should they just solve it and submit that PR? What is there a better strategy around, I guess, getting feedback before you do the work?
Yeah, so if you find an issue that you want to work on, the first step is to assign it to yourself. You can use a /assign for that. And then you can make comments on issues too. So you can ask for clarification, or in addition to reaching out to somebody in the Kubernetes Slack, because in the Kubernetes Slack, there'll be a separate channel just for that SIG, or just for that, that not the issue, but the topic. And so you'll be able to communicate back and forth, and I think you'll realize that the communication is, it's very they're very responsive in terms of the so you won't sit there for a week and not get a response.
Short turnaround time. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's a good way to proceed with actually working on the issue. And then as you come through those stumbling blocks and issues, you can communicate. It's actually preferred if you communicate through Slack, because you can kind of flood the comment section of the issue, which is not very helpful for other people. But I think communication is key, and the main way to do that is in Kubernetes Slack. So.
And then what's the right thing to do when you found this issue that you think, I can solve this. I know exactly what to do. You assign it to yourself. You might have that discussion, to say, here's what I'm going to do, and is this the kind of the right thing to do? And then a few days in, you're like, oh wait, this is harder than I thought, and I'm not the right person to do this. How do I give up, or should I just pound through and try to solve it? Or at what point do I say, I don't have the skill set to do this?
I mean, I would encourage you to pound through it and to really challenge yourself to to kind of get in that mode of being comfortable with being uncomfortable, right? And I think, in most cases, and myself included, I'm not able to solve most issues. And so I think what I would encourage people to do is to have someone by your side and community to walk you through it. And don't be afraid to ask dumb questions. I ask dumb questions all the time. And but if you do decide, like I had somebody recently that said, hey, I have to, a work thing came up and I just don't have the time to work on this right now. So I said, okay, go ahead and put it in the comments section, the /unassign, which will unassign you to the ticket. And maybe you can assign it to someone else if you have a buddy that you're working on this with, or you can wait for somebody else to pick it up. So,
yeah, this is actually a pretty good example. That the one you referenced us is like there's an exchange where someone assigned and someone asked if they could take it up, and so that person gave it up. Today, this actually happened. This was and it all happened through chatbot commands. A real quick question on this: how do I correlate an issue that I'm seeing and the Slack group that it's in? Is it as simple as just looking at the SIG assignment and then going and looking up like SIG testing in Slack? Is that a way to get started?
Yeah. I think there is a general chat where you could ask like, hey, I have this issue. Where do I go? But
yeah,
I think it's pretty self-explanatory in terms of you could even search the keyword itself or the label itself, so
right in the endless channel list.
Yeah, because it is overwhelming. If you go to Kubernetes Slack, there's thousands of channels. So
yeah. What about this one?
Another thing that's not been mentioned yet, but probably important to keep in mind, if you're working with Kubernetes and you discover a problem that you think no one else has seen, the best thing to do is not just solve and submit a PR, but start with an issue first, right?
Yeah. So first thing, check to see if there's other issues that are similar, so you're not duplicating efforts there. But yeah, I think creating an issue is the very first step. If you do see something new that is genuinely new, and then you're also, if this is your first time creating an issue, again, directing back to Kubernetes Slack to ask somebody, hey, how do I do this? Or what's the best way to do this? Because there is kind of that kind of methodology that you have to follow, that workflow that you have to follow, that will get it categorized correctly, and we'll get it to the right people, and we'll get it in the right hands. So,
and I think what Matt's also kind of reaching for there too is generally random PRs don't go well. Like if someone's not aware that you're coming at them with a change to the source code that you maintain, and they give you a request to pull their changes, it's not, on small projects like mine, I get probably every week someone who accidentally, because maybe they're learning GitHub at the same time, they accidentally pull request their own work to my courses. So I have a lot of like closed pull requests that people open it, and then the same day they close it because they go, oops, sorry, because GitHub tends to sometimes with forks want to always push you towards your commits going or your PRs going upstream instead of to your own repo. I don't always like that approach because I'm constantly changing. No, I don't want to change that guy's. I want to change my fork, or whatever. And people do that a lot. So that's a great sort of pro tip on open source in general, is like make sure people know you're coming with the changes first, unless you're literally just like spell checking a word or something. That's probably one of the few exceptions I would make to that. Like you don't need to file an issue for fixing a markdown issue or whatever. I want to change the subject.
Bots help you with that a lot. I think when you create a pull request, the bots will not only prompt you to sign the CLA, which is that legal hurdle I was talking about before, but it will also walk you through the process of categorizing that and using the / kind of keyword thing, and categorizing that into a specific category of whatever whatever you're trying to fix. So I think through that, I think it weeds out a lot of those erroneous PRs. So
Yeah. The next thing I want to talk about real quick is this onboarding course. What is this about?
Yeah. So the contributor experience SIG has created this wonderful website that is for contributors and new contributors and old contributors, everyone to reference so that they can, learn how to do their first contribution, or how to what the developer guide is, how to how to build from source, and how to do all those more complex things. So and everywhere in between. So this is made by made and maintained by the contributor experience community, and it's something that I always refer people back to when they're trying to learn the basics and going through that workflow of contributing.
Nice. All right, so you got sections. It's a lot of stuff
Yeah,
there.
so these are basically just slides. It's not a course in that you would think of like Bret's course. It's more of a slide by slide, walking you through step by step, and then providing you links along the way to, reference documentation that's already there. That's partially due to it not being outdated and not becoming obsolete over at the rapid pace of these projects, but also just provide a good kind of step-by-step, easier, less cluttered way of going through it.
Yeah. And then, so I guess like a companion URL is the cheat sheet.
Yeah. So it's like the TLDR, right? If you're familiar with contributing and you want to go back to say, oh, how do I do this particular thing? The cheat sheet's the way to go.
Nice. For those in chat, do you have any questions for Chad, whether it's about his book, on acing the KCD?
CKA.
Wait, CK. Yeah, sorry. my brain was fumbling that acronym. CKA, or in contributing to Kubernetes. Make sure you get those in. We're going to be wrapping it up here in a few minutes. And we have some books to give away.
Yes. I have some questions. So how we're going to do this is I'm going to ask you some pretty easy questions on the topic of Kubernetes, not necessarily open source, but just around the book and Kubernetes clusters. And then the first person to answer, we'll give them a code for
chat.
A free ebook in the chat. Yes. So the first question
Don't just
is,
scream out the answer in your room, because we're not going to hear that.
Can't hear you. Yeah. So the first question is, what is the mechanism that restricts access to the Kubernetes cluster? What mechanism in Kubernetes restricts access to the cluster, or more specifically, the API? So it's the process of, RBAC. Tahir, you got it. Cool. So role-based access control.
Nice. Oh, I mean, he got the acronym wrong, like I would type, but I'm pretty sure that's what he meant. Yeah. Nice. Yep. All right. So how does he get this? How does he get a book from you?
So Tahir, if you would reach out to me on Twitter, just my DMs are open. Send me a direct message on Twitter, and I'll get you the code to get that ebook. And my Twitter handle is @ChadM, as in Michael, Crowell, Crowell. So nice and easy.
Yeah, I'm going to post that in chat as well. Although Matt's pretty quick on the links today.
No, you're...
Congrats to hear. So
only when I see you're slow.
Second question. So second free book we're going to give away here. So being that the nature of pods in Kubernetes is ephemeral, so temporary, meaning that they often are killed and respawn, what is the resource that creates the persistence of data? So, a lot of people know if you create a container, if that container dies, also the data goes along with it, right? So what is the mechanism to kind of prevent that, or have the data persist beyond the life of the pod?
So this is the resource name, right?
The resource name, yep.
Yeah.
So PV, Praveen is the first person to abbreviate that, which stands for persistent volume. So Praveen is our winner. Good job.
All right, good job. Second one down. Remember, the link to Chad's Twitter is above, so you can reach out to him there.
Yeah, and
last one.
Third and final book. The question is, what is the DNS server that Kubernetes uses?
We should get some rapid replies on this one.
DNS server in Kubernetes. What is it called? Not kubedns.
Yeah. I was thinking that same thing. I was like, there were two.
Core DNS. So can't read that name, but it's the.
Yeah.
Yeah. So congratulations. Everybody's to those three people, just send me a message on Twitter and I'll get you your code to get a free copy of the ebook version of Acing the Certified Kubernetes Administrator exam. That's
this thing that we were talking about an hour ago. Time flies. So Chad's book is on Manning, and for the three of you, if you reach out to him on Twitter, you can get that coupon. Thank you so much, Chad and Manning, for providing.
Okay, I have questions.
Oh yeah, go ahead. I wasn't wrapping up. I was just
thinking.
Okay, I was wrapping up this segment. Sorry.
This segment. Okay, continue wrapping up this segment.
No, I'm done. I'm done now. See, this is what happens when you get two new co-hosts together. So we have to talk on screen about how do we end this.
So I have a question, kind of bringing us back to originally when we started this. We talked about this is maybe another way of learning about Kubernetes and learning about Kubernetes by contributing. And I'm curious about what are some of the things that you have learned in your process of contributing to Kubernetes, to the open source projects. What are some things that you think you've learned about the project you wouldn't have learned if you didn't do these contributions?
I think the one that comes to mind is the inner workings of Kubernetes. And I think it was an issue that I ran into recently. It was with Kind, because I use Kind Kubernetes in the book. And I think I had an issue with creating something to do with ingress, maybe creating a load balancer. But I think I learned a little bit more about how the API exposes the ingress and how ingress controllers work. And through running into that issue and then working through someone to resolve that, and just along the way getting little bits of information that I didn't know before, and it just allowed me to get a different perspective and also shed some light on fixing this particular issue. I think in a lot of scenarios in my career, at least, I still haven't learned this technique of like just stepping away from it for a little bit and then coming back. But sometimes it takes that stepping away from it and coming back, or it takes another person to say, that right there is not correct, or that right there, maybe you want to change this thing, or tweak this thing a little bit and see if that works. Just an extra pair of eyes really helps in those particular scenarios.
And I'm wondering if this is a good time to. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh yeah. Well, thinking about you had this experience with Kind specifically, and depending on the the kind of Kubernetes you're running, whether it's, maybe on your local machine with Kind or MicroK8s or Minikube or Docker desktop Kubernetes. Is there any resource online that kind of looks at all these different things for, let's say, building having a load balancer? What are some of the things that you're going to have to do differently on all these different platforms? Because it's sometimes a little bit different because and not really a Kubernetes question, but how does Kubernetes interact with the platform that it's on, which in my case is going to be Mac, but it could be a Linux box. And sometimes I have, I know exactly how to do it on one platform, but then it just doesn't work on Kind or Micro Kubernetes or something else. You ever seen any resources that look at all those different platforms and try to answer that kind of question?
Yeah, I wouldn't direct people to a specific site or resource. So what I would start with the documentation, right? So whatever distribution of Kubernetes that you're using. So in the case of Kind, I would go to kind.k8s.io. In the case of just general Kubernetes, I would go to kubernetes.io. With like OpenShift, I would go to their documentation, and so I would start there. I would start with searching through the documentation and seeing all these different use cases if they've been addressed already, and if there's a common practice. A lot of times, it takes just going through. How is this commonly used, right? So this is normally set up like this. I have it set up like this. Then you can compare the two. And then secondly, if you keep getting stuck on that and can't find it in the documentation, then I would direct people to communities such as the Kubernetes Slack, or I actually have my own. I actually have my own community that I started. It's called kubeskills.com. So KUBE skills.com. And
I was ready to go on that one.
Nice. And so so you can go, this is a free community where you can learn Kubernetes with a smaller group of individuals who are all kind of helping people learn Kubernetes. So we have tips on, going through open source contributions like we're talking about today, but we also have like, Kubernetes 101, what are all these resources that we talked about, like persistent volumes, like pods and, replica sets and deployments. And then also like studying for the exams, right? So there's the KCNA, CKA, CKAD, and CKS. It took me a while to
I don't think I can say them that fast.
So pretty proud of myself.
That's actually pretty impressive.
But yeah, we're all studying for exams as well, and so it's a fun little space to collaborate with people on as well.
Yeah, we probably should have a whole show dedicated to like the exam process, because it's from my point of view, it's gotten more formal and it's changed over the years. And the challenge right now, I think of course with any cert, is like to find the up-to-date resources and the current situation with what's going on there, because all certifications end up, not only does the content have to evolve, but then like the process of actually getting tested. I hear a lot of people complaining about that just because it's, they want to avoid cheating. So there's a little bit of a process that you got to go through to take some of these tests nowadays. And the Linux Foundation seems to be doing a good job of trying to keep things regular. Unlike some other old non-Linux Foundation certs that I have taken, where they get way out of date and you're basically taking a test on a version that no one's running anymore. And this process doesn't seem to be that way. So we probably should have a whole separate episode on that. So Matt and I'll have to take that mental note.
Yeah. If you've ever taken the OpenShift exam, it's like they make you create your own USB drive, which is some distribution of Red Hat, and you have to boot to a USB, and then it brings you into a proctored environment, and then there's like all these hoops that you have to jump through. It's pretty crazy.
Wow. Yeah, I long for the days where I just went to my local testing center and I got a cubicle in a corner, and it was like it was a 15-year-old PC that could barely keep up. I'm an old Microsofty guy, so I have I think I have 30 Microsoft certifications. So I for quite a few years I was like, I should have got like a membership plan basically at that certification center.
I went to the H&R Block. You go to the H&R Block and you tell them I'm here for a certification. They bring you up to the back room.
like they're sharing space or something.
Yeah, it's pretty funny, but yeah, H&R Block is a good.
So get your certification and your taxes done.
Yeah, 2 for 1.
Nice. Well, Chad, unless Matt, sorry, I'm going to wrap up. Did you have any other questions, Matt? I don't want to.
I have 3 things I wanted to bring up that are not specifically for Chad.
Let's do it. Okay.
I'm going to use a little bit of time, but just to say that I've got a t-shirt on for DevOps Days Seattle. We're doing our planning for next year, this coming year. We've got our CFP open. Some of the best talks that we ever get are from regular other people that are not part of the normal circuit. So if you have any ideas for talks that would be interesting, DevOps Days Seattle is would love to have your talk. Another thing I want to mention is I just noticed, I noticed within about 10 minutes of this show starting that obviously I didn't look at myself in the mirror because my beard on this side is down here and over on this side is way up here, and I don't know what's up with that. So
is it a costume? Is it like fake? Did you not get it on straight today?
I don't know. I don't know how I did that. So anyway, that and then the last thing. I listen to I often listen to podcasts, especially when I am walking the dog around the block. And I was listening to one pretty recently, Kube Cuddle, not Kube Cuddle, but Kube Cuddle, like cuddly, Cuddle. They did a interview with Joe Betta. I think this was back in December or so. Really good. So I'm catching up to December right now. But a really interesting interview with Joe Betta, who's one of the original guys focused on Kubernetes and what it was like building Kubernetes at the time. What was the landscape like? How amazing was Docker when it came out, and how did it change everything, even though there were things like jails and other systems before, but also what's it like building a startup, and how would he do Kubernetes differently today if he were redoing it. So I thought this was an amazing little interview, amazing interview with a really interesting guy. So you might want to check that out.
Very nice. Yeah, I'm excited that I think when I started this podcast, there were I don't believe there were any Kubernetes ones, and there was very little, like Arrested DevOps and maybe a few other ones were the only ones that were really talking about the DevOps or cloud native space. And now we have, I think because of the pandemic, we had a surge, and it's awesome. And there's so much content that I was just listening to a changelog the other day. Changelog Ship It, I think, is one of their newer ones, and Ship It's a pretty great one. And I think sadly, I put this on Twitter the other day. One of the saddest things to me is when a podcast dies. Usually it's because the long game is hard, and doing this year after year after year. And so thank you, Matt, for being here. By the way, I want to just point out that this is the first show with a guest that Matt has co-hosted.
Yeah.
So thank you, Matt, so much for being here and volunteering your time.
And we only went over each other, 2 or 3 times. So we're learning.
And then we work all that out in post. That's how we say that. We work that out in post.
Yeah.
I have a great editor, Christy. Hey, Christy.
Sorry. You mentioned DevOps Days Seattle. DevOps Days Austin in Austin, Texas is coming up on May the 4th. May the 4th be with you.
Oh, okay.
This is the time of year that this is all because I have a DevOps Days Raleigh. So between the 3 of us, we probably have a DevOps Days within a couple of months of each other.
So DevOps Days Austin, I did a lightning talk a bunch of years ago at talking about how I built out the music system at the Datadog Boston office, and it turned out to be really challenging. So that's a few years ago. But Austin, I loved going to the Austin event. It was like in the top level of the stadium there, I think. I don't know if it still is there, but it's just great.
Is the Austin one which one's the original? Is it Austin?
Original is, wasn't it like Ghent in Belgium?
Oh, my history needs to be corrected.
Yes.
Okay. Can't even claim that it was an American thing.
Been on for 12 years, I think. So.
Yeah. I think speaking of Austin DevOps Days, one of the courses I often recommend is by two gentlemen on LinkedIn Learning, and I believe they either currently or formerly were helping with DevOps Days there, and they have a great course on DevOps fundamentals. If anyone in here has asked me personally about DevOps curriculum, like that's probably to me the best starter course for anyone out there. If you're brand new to DevOps, because they unlike every 99.9% of all DevOps courses on Udemy, and there are a lot, all focus on tooling first. They might have a section that talks about concepts and principles and culture, but the DevOps, I'm going to pull this up just because we're talking about it, but I should have it bookmarked. DevOps Foundations right here. This is a great one, and it's James Wickett and Ernest Mueller. I don't know if you know either one of those, but it's very high quality, well done production, and they really avoid the tooling like rabbit hole so that you're really focused on the principles, kind of like the DevOps Handbook does. Like the first page of your learning shouldn't be let's install Jenkins. Like that's what a lot of the courses end up doing, but anyway, when we're talking about DevOps Days, I'm excited to get back to real world conferences again this year. So I've said that 1,000 times, but
James Wickett is pretty interesting. I remember he was head of research at Signal Sciences so I don't know what happened to Signal Sciences. I don't know if I think they got acquired by somebody. And we mentioned DevOps Days. Most of the DevOps Days, they're all volunteer run events. And one of the things that everybody is really bad at with, and you have to deal with a lot of it for a lot of these DevOps Days is money. I mean, you have to rent out a large conference center. And I remember for DevOps Days Boston, when I was on that planning group, the year before, they were personally liable for like $100,000 for the local hotel that was being rented for 2 days. But dealing with money is hard. And it turns out James Wickett's wife does the books for basically all the DevOps Days. So that's another connection to the Wickett family. Yeah.
Nice.
Fun stuff.
Yeah. The back the back, what do you call it? The back office of conferences is just, there's so much work. It's never ending. And
speaking of conferences, the KubeCon is coming up in April.
Yeah. Are you going?
I'm going. I'll be there, and I'm giving a talk at Linkerd Day. And they're giving away. Say it again.
Was Linkerd Day before or after?
Linkerd Day is during. So it's the first day.
During. Okay.
18th, Tuesday.
Cool.
And so, go, if you're going, please reach out and say hi. But also, I think they're giving away. I think it's 200 tickets. Linux Foundation or CNCF is giving away 200 tickets for those who have recently been laid off. So check that out.
Yeah, I saw that being put on Twitter by Arun Gupta. I tried to magnify that because that's a pretty amazing resource for those that their company. I actually have people that are coming in one of my course that starts in 2 weeks, and he's learning Kubernetes not for the current job but for the next job. So obviously his employer won't pay for him to learn Kubernetes because they have Swarm and they think it's fine, and they have they only have 10 containers or whatever. But he's planning for the next one and is trying to get this, all of the training and the certifications and understanding. And that's a great example where it's possible that he doesn't have the funds for it, or he's and is this specifically for laid off, right? Though I think I'm realizing that's maybe not applicable to his scenario. Here it is. I'm trying to find the tweet. There's a link here. I guess this link maybe takes us to a page about.
On the registration and just the normal registration page, you can apply. They have student discounts too, I think. Yeah. If you've never been to a KubeCon, it's really good fun. One of the biggest, if not the biggest, open source conferences.
It's true. I was thinking, well, I get there's a lot of other bigger ones, but they're not open source focused. I don't think I'm actually going. I think I'm waiting until Chicago. I applied for multiple ways to get there, not on my own dime, but I haven't heard a thing back from the Linux Foundation. So my assumption is that it's granted, I still got plenty of time, I guess, but my assumption is that they're either my request was denied or not looked at or whatever. I heard that there was a media option. So instead of paying on my own way, because I don't have an employer to pay for me, I heard that there was a media option. So if you're a part of like this show, that people can actually get their way paid, or at least, get them comped basically to get there. And I haven't heard anything back from them. So if they're out there, I sent you a form or whatever. I filled out the form. I asked people at KubeCon at the registration desk, and they took my information, and I heard nothing. And I'm trying every way I know how, but nobody's responding. So maybe
Chicago one should be fun. Looking forward to that in November, I think. Right?
It's gonna be cold though, unless we have a unusual heat wave. Chicago in November is not one of my favorite locations. So I'm excited to see everyone, but I hope we don't do anything outside.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Sorry, I just away because we subscribe to a service called Ridwell. They do kind of recycling, all the recycling stuff that most recycling places don't take. So, and the guy showed up. We forgot to put the container outside, so I had to run and deal with that. Sorry.
Ridwell.
Sorry, Ridwell. Do you know about Ridwell?
I do not.
They're great. It's kind of weird paying extra for them to take away your plastic bags, but it's a neat service.
Well, technically, you're paying in taxes locally anyway if you do it.
I guess.
And that's the same problem we have. Is our area is very restrictive. So there's, I would say, I have not seen a single person's recycling that properly obeys the rules, because it's like it's like 3 things and 4 things maybe, and they're throwing everything that they. Yeah. If it's made of plastic or somehow got paper in it, people are throwing it in the recycling, and it's not going there. That's a good idea. I'm gonna have to look that up. Chad, thank you so much for being on the show, and especially being on an extra half an hour longer. We appreciate you hanging in there, and we had a ton of content here, so it's going to make it to the podcast. For those of you that didn't know, this is a podcast that we do live so that you can hang out and chat and have great conversation and good questions like you did today. So thank you so much for hanging out. We are here every Thursday, and the next week will actually be, I think I'm solo next week, giving these guys a break, and then we're going to be coming back. We've got some upcoming guests, including. You won't be back? No, I'm kicking you out for next week.
I'm hurt.
It's just me next week. I'm giving you a break. You get 1 week off. You're not getting paid for this, so stop complaining. Oh, sorry. We've got Corey Quinn coming, by the way, the chief cloud economist from the Duckbill Group. That's going to be a fun one. I'm excited to have him on. I've been trying to figure out a way to get him on for a while now. And we've got a whole bunch of other people in the pipeline, all around CNCF, containers, Kubernetes. We've got Microsoft people coming. We're going to have hopefully lock in some dates on some exciting big names this year. So come back and listen to the show below. There's the podcast link. We release a podcast every other week, if not more. So come hang out. And of course, Chad's got tons of community. You just heard about all his stuff. We have our community over there, the DevOps fan above Matt's head. You can hang out with all the DevOps people, and which is happening every day. Oh no, we want Matt. Okay, so it looks like I'm having to adjust my schedule. So we'll figure it out. Thank you so much. I appreciate the comments. Oh, and we have a new member. Snarsk, if that's how I'm going to say it, Snarsk. Thank you so much for being a member of this channel. Thank you. I really appreciate it. I deliberately don't do ads or sponsorship so that we can try to keep it as simple as possible without conflict, and also just be about the community and whatever the members want. So thank you for being here. Look forward to seeing you in the Discord server. All right. Thanks, guys. I will see you all at the next conference, if not at KubeCon Chicago or before. So, yeah. Ciao, everyone.
See you then. Bye.
Bye.